So good afternoon, welcome to lecture 5 of Business Technology and Innovation. Today we discuss organization strategy and technology and innovation. So the last 4 lectures were focused on innovation, and now we shift to a discussion of the organization, of the business part of the course. So in the coming lectures, we'll discuss the interplay between technology, innovation, organization strategy, next week structure and culture, the week after that business processes, and I think in week 9 people in organizations and innovation and technology. So today is the first lecture of the 5 or so lectures on the business part of the course. But first of all, I think you all know, of course, but we do have the workgroup sessions this week. So bear in mind that you have to be present at the workgroup session, and you have to notify me if you cannot be present. So don't forget to show up on time as well, because I hope we can start the workgroup sessions a bit before the official starting time, by 2:45, because I think we'll need all the time we have in the workgroup sessions. So I think I will see some of you tomorrow already, Tuesday at 2:30, and we'll also be there on Wednesday at 10:30. And the 2 co-lecturers, Kim ten Velde and Peter Buger, will teach the remainder, all the other workgroup sessions. So that's for this week. Of course, you've already all handed in or are working on the presentations, so I guess you already know. So today, what we'll be doing? Well, we'll be talking about an organization strategy. So first part of the lecture, we'll discuss what an organization strategy is, how it is different from business model, what we discussed last week. And in the remainder of the lecture, we'll be discussing a bunch of tools with which you can analyze the strategy of an organization, which help you to define what your course of action should be as an organization in the coming years, because that, in short, is what a strategy is. So let's start with business strategy. First of all, what is a strategy, and what is the difference between what we discussed last week, a business model, and the strategy of an organization? Well, to be honest, a business model is a lot like a strategy, because a business model you create around your innovation is basically the strategy you create around your innovation that explains how your strategy, how your innovation will be a success. The strategy of an organization is really quite similar, but the main differences are that the strategy is for the organization itself. So an organization can be larger than a single innovation, and a business model usually, as we discussed last week, also fills in more like specific components of a strategy. So the marketing and external components are really part of a business model. What value does your innovation deliver? What needs does it target? That's not really the goal of an organization strategy. So it's quite similar, but an organization strategy in general is the general future direction and actions of a company. So basically, what we will be doing as an organization in the coming years. So that starts out fairly general, like formulating strategic goals, but then it is worked out more concretely. So you define a strategy in order to achieve specific objectives, and you can specify those objectives with or in your strategic plan. So it relates to fundamental choices about your organization. So what we'll be focusing on, what we'll be doing in the coming years, and what not. The strategy is not a thing on its own, but it's always a fit between the organization and the strategy. So organization defines a future direction, taking into account the current organization. Do we need to change? Do we need to keep course, etc.? So that's basically a strategy. If you want to define it in one sentence, it will be the future direction and actions of a company. The strategy is important because if you look at an organization, the strategy of an organization is quite complex. So an organization has to deal with a lot of internal and external stakeholders. Stakeholders are all those parties involved in and outside of an organization that influence or may influence the organization. So internally, you of course have your employees as a major stakeholder, of course, in the organization, which is here like only one word in this figure. But employees can be, a lot of different groups. People working at different departments, of course, different locations from different levels, etc. So this is a large group. But it's not your only internal stakeholders. Your board of directors, the owners of the company, if not the same as the board of directors, are internal stakeholders as well. And they, of course, have their wishes and their demands that kind of determine where the organization will be heading as well. Then there is the immediate environment of the organization. So the task environment. So the immediate environment that affects the current workings and the immediate future workings of the organization. And here we have things like customers, of course, competitors, suppliers, distributors, but also, allies, lenders, unions, and things like governments, interest groups, and media. So everyone in the immediate surrounding all groups that can affect your organization. Okay, you have a negative backlash in the media. There can be all kinds of interest groups that support or not support you, etc. And of course, this external environment is influenced by more general societal, not societal, by more general environmental factors that affect the task environment and then affect your organization. So economic forces, technological forces, political forces, etc. We'll discuss those later. So you as an organization, if you are an organization or part of the organization, of course, then you can imagine that you have to take into account many of these stakeholders in order to define the future goals of your organization. And if something changes, if you have a very negative backlash in the media, if suppliers suddenly change or go out of business, if there are things happening in wider society that affect your organization, you need to do something with that. And all those are inputs for defining strategy. So when we talk about a strategy, it's best to discuss both the strategy and the mission and vision of an organization. So they are sometimes intertwined, but the strategy is a more concrete definition of what you'll be doing in the coming years as an organization, while the mission and vision is really a general statement that of basically what the organization does. So a mission officially is a statement of what a business wants to achieve and what business it is in. So it's basically the reason for being. And a vision is kind of an image of your future, a general image of the future direction. It's derived from a mission. It's kind of an input for strategy, and it kind of broadly defines what goal you want to achieve finally as an organization, world domination or maybe something a bit less. So that is the official distinction between a mission and a vision statement. But to be honest, if you look at any mission and vision statement of an organization, they are intertwined and are almost never separate mission and vision statements. But it's good to know generally what a mission and a vision is. I would like to ask you, what do you think that the main reason of being is for an organization? So what's the most important thing that an organization wants? Let's see if you can come up with a couple of reasons. Make money, yeah. Profit, guess that's the same. Profit. Anything else? You know, I work for a university, and I think, you know, we don't necessarily want to make profit. Yeah, contribution to society, absolutely. Yeah. Satisfy stakeholders, absolutely, very important. Value, generic term, of course, but creating value for stakeholders, improve environment. Yeah, absolutely. So these, with what you see here, you know, a better atmosphere and back. Oh, very good. Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. So what you see here are basically broad terms that you often see in mission and vision statements of an organization. So I have a couple of examples in 2 slides. But there you see, there is never an organization that specifically says they want to make profits in their mission and vision statement, because that would look bad to certain other stakeholders, but it's always in there. You know, they want to focus on cost efficiency, deliver the best value, that kind of things, which they basically mean profit. But you see those terms often in mission and vision statements. So contribute to society, satisfy stakeholders, increasing shareholder value or customer value, and now, of course, sustainability and environmental values are often included in mission statements as well of organizations. And of course, many organizations also have, as part of their mission and vision statement, that they want to, they also address internal stakeholders, other employees. So well done. In general, though, the main goal of an organization is to keep existing. So that is some kind of overarching goal of every organization, because almost every organization, except maybe, you know, a suicide prevention organization, wants to remain alive. But of course, right below that would be the mission and vision statement of the organization in terms of, you know, value, profit, and value to customers, etc. So why are these generic terms that define mission and vision important? You know, like improve environment, value for stakeholders. So why are those generic statements important? Well, because they inform strategy, and because the strategy informs goals and objectives. So this is basically the whole strategic pyramid of a firm. So you have a mission and vision statement, you have a strategy, and you have goals and objectives. And arrows are a bit weird here, but let me explain. So on top is your mission and vision statement. That's basically what you do as an organization. You know, if you as an organization make bicycles, then something like that would be your mission and vision statements, and you will not suddenly switch to making pancakes. Probably not, because your mission and vision statements kind of defines that you're into the transportation business. So it kind of gives guidance to your organization. Also in the mission and vision statement, you would say, okay, we make bicycles, but we want to, but our main focus is on doing it sustainable and making it easier for people to travel around. So something like that, which could be like a broad statement of what you want to achieve in the future. From that, you derive your strategic objectives. So you say, okay, in the coming years, we want to focus on making our bikes in a carbon neutral way, whatever. And that in terms defines your concrete goals and objectives. which is basically the strategy, but then worked out in concrete goals that you can actually achieve. So within 10 years, we want to have reduced the carbon emission for the manufacturing a bike with 75%, something like that. So something that is concrete and measured. Though, of course, it can also be the other way around, and that's why the arrows are here. So your strategy informs your goals and objectives, but also, of course, there's a kind of a link between strategy and mission and vision, because your mission and vision can also change because you see a new strategic direction for your organization that your organization must follow. So a strategy can also be an input to change your mission and vision. Though in general, that doesn't really happen that often, of course. So let's look at some mission and vision statements of certain companies. So if you ask people to name a company, people always mention Apple first. So let's do this one. So they say their mission and vision statements is a lot, but on the right is I think the central issue, to bringing the best user experience to its customers through its innovative hardware, software, and services. And this is quite generic, but it really shows what Apple is aiming for. So it specifically says the best user experience. It does not say cutting costs or the best value for money, something like that. So the specific focus on Apple has been and probably will always be the best user experience. And they say we'll do it through hardware, software, and services. And they're not specific about the hardware, the software, and the services, and that's because they are a general technology company and they make laptops and phones, and maybe in the future they will make something completely different, which also fits that description. And is also a technical product, but it's something that we don't even realize could exist yet. But it will still fit our mission and vision statements, of making technology and software and services surrounding the technology that bring the best user experience. So if your mission is too narrow and they say, well, to bring the best user experience to customers through its innovative laptops, then you would always have a discussion with your stakeholders, with your employees, with your board of directors about, okay, we make laptops, but shouldn't we make tablets or something like that? So that's why it's generally, the mission and vision is generally formulated broadly. So that's one example. I'd like to know if you have other examples of companies you work for. So post them in the chat and see if we can, if you have other examples what a mission and vision statement is. In the meantime, I will continue. So this is, I think, a good example of Ahold Delhaize. I think you know, and if not, then you do know now that Ahold Delhaize have merged, and Ahold, so Albert Heijn and many other stores in the Netherlands. And Delhaize, which is the Delhaize supermarkets in Belgium, and many other supermarkets around the world, have merged, and they're now one company. And this is a mission and vision statement of Ahold Delhaize. So leading together, that of course is a new mission statement because they merged and they needed to show that they were not together. But it contains the word leading, which kind of makes it, which kind of shows that they want to grow and want to become a leader in their branch worldwide. Purpose: eat well, save time, live better, which refers to what they want to achieve. So again, Ahold Delhaize are supermarkets in the top branch of supermarkets. They are not Aldi. So they focus on eat well, save time, live better instead of buy cheap mess, which of course would not be in the mission statement of any company. But this shows that they are really are focused on providing a better product than competitors. And also live better, of course, means healthy, but also the environment. So it kind of plays into wider societal issues. And then they kind of worked it out pretty well in their business model, what they call business model, which is not the same as our definition of business model. So what do they want to be? An omnichannel experience. So that basically means they want to do HelloFresh, delivery service, supermarkets, etc. Safe for our customers, which means buy better, operate smarter, waste less. Still a focus on efficiency, and invest in our customer propositions, which means sustainable, healthy, etc. Well, then they have a lot of core values which really tie into the internal stakeholder part, which relates to the what was said here, the contribute to employees part. A better atmosphere inside the company, that was specifically mentioned that. So eat well, save time, live better. Yeah, I think that would be their main mission statement. Although they really have a very broad mission statement, because of course the values they have, courage, integrity, teamwork, can be seen as the culture of the organization, but also gives some direction to what they to what kind of employees you hire and what kind of culture you want to strive to. So I think our values are also a bit part of the mission and vision statement, relate more to culture. So eat well, save time, live better would be their main mission statement. And it is worked out a bit better in the business model, which can be seen as their strategy for the coming period. So their purpose, their mission, their reason of being is eat well, save time, live better. And their business models, or what they want to do in the coming years, which could be defined as their strategy, is save for our customers, offer omnichannel experience, investing in our customer propositions. Yeah, so like I said, so the mission and vision statement is basically almost all the time integrated into a combined mission and vision statement. So eat well, save time, live better is what they currently do, but also what they strive towards. So, so in this case, it's integrated. Tech data, connecting the world with the power of technology. They are an IT distributor. Yeah, well, that's a good example. Connecting the world with the power of what do they exactly do as an IT distributor? Are they responsible for the network, or do they, sell servers, or a consultancy company? Maybe I can Google it. This one? Yeah, okay. Cloud, Internet of Things, security, services, B2B connectivity, capitalism, supply chain management. Yeah. Yeah, so a more wide-ranging service provider for IT software and hardware. Oh, interesting company. Oh, in the cybersecurity part. Oh, that's interesting. As a cybersecurity expert, or as a sales consultant, or don't want to fear to make this a really a one-on-one conversation, of course, but I would be curious. But connecting the world with the power of technology, so that's a generic mission statement. It kind of means that they are a IT company, so they call it technology, but of course information technology, and they want to connect the world by increasing the connectivity by use of cloud services and other IT related solutions that are used to connect organizations, connect people within the organization, etc. Interesting example. I recommend. So I think that's an interesting example. Also, you see that it's oftentimes quite broad. So if you take the last example here, Google, their mission statement is to mission and vision is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful, and to provide access to the world's information in one click. So that's really efficient because you will never attain access to the world's information in one click. But that's clearly, you know, their ideal world, something which they continuously strive towards. And in doing so, they want to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Realize that there is nothing about, you know, search engines, Gmail, operating systems, or whatever in this mission statement, but they see themselves really as information gatherers, information organizers. And if you look at their strategy, they focus on, you know, advertising, connecting advertisers with us, consumers. And they focus on health, you know, providing artificial intelligence for health purposes. They focus on artificial intelligence with Google Lens, Google Voice. So it all relates to organizing and making accessible the world's information. And everything they do falls below that general mission and vision statement. So let's do one fun example. There is a peanut butter store in Amsterdam. It's now already, I think, in more cities across the Netherlands. It's called the Pindakaaswinkel. It's a peanut butter shop. What would you think would be a good mission statement for the Pindakaaswinkel? So a shop which sells, which now uniquely sells peanut butter in many different flavors. So what would a mission vision statement look like? A pure peanut butter with delicious flavors. I think that is I would apply for a job if I were you. There, getting everything out. Yeah, it's fortunate that you specified it as peanuts instead of nut. Oh, there are a lot of people. But that's also, I think that's also pretty interesting as well. I like their socks more than the peanut butter. I'm going to Google in the break. So it's kind of interesting because the two solutions here focus on the peanut butter part. But what you could also say as a mission statement is providing the best, I forgot the English word for broodbeleg, spread. So help me out if you know the English word for broodbeleg. You know, providing the best spread, providing something broader than peanut butter. So they can also make chocolate paste or Nutella ripoff or something like that. Bread spread. Yeah, seriously. That's a weird word. Topping, bread topping? Yeah, something like that. Well, for all of you who don't speak Dutch, something like that. So you could also define the mission statement in terms of more generic than only peanut butter, because that would leave room for other types of products, but still within the same business. So I'm not saying that the mission statement is given here or wrong, but that's really a strategic choice of your organization to kind of see what are we actually, what kind of business we're in. And it's a very good choice to say, well, okay, we found a niche, we focus on peanut butter, but it could also be a strategic decision to define it more broadly so that you can, in the future, maybe, you know, open a chocolate, a Nutella-based shop or something like that. So that is an example. So I want to say two things about the technology aspect here. So in the coming weeks, we'll also be continuously discussing the interplay between the characteristics of the organization, like strategy, etc., and technology. And this is one. So you see here that a mission and vision statement is important because mission and vision statement says something about IS stands, thank you. Yes, IS stands for information systems. I'm going to explain what an information system is in a couple of lectures, but for now, you can just equal information system with information technology. Yeah, thanks, sorry. So you see here that a mission and a vision statement is basically who we are, what we want to become, usually communicated together. Is for reasons of explaining what kind of business you are, and often that is also has a kind of an external function. So the mission and vision statement actually communicates what you are to all of your stakeholders, to your board of directors, to your employees, to your customers, to the media. And that's why you also see like this quite extensive mission and vision statement of Ahold Delhaize, because they created this to basically serve all of their stakeholders. So you have values for the employees, you have a business model tailored to the customers and the immediate stakeholders, and a general purpose so that everyone knows what business they're in. So from that, you derive your strategy for the coming years, and from that, you derive your concrete goals and objectives. But if you take this a step further, your IT and innovation strategy, so your information systems and the specific technological innovations you want to do within your organization, also depend on its general strategy and mission and vision. So basically from your basic strategy, you derive specific strategy related to technology. So for example, okay, we want to focus on cutting costs in the coming years. Maybe there is an investment in information technology we can do in order to manufacture our products cheaper. Or we want to focus more on a customer perspective in our organization. Maybe we should invest in some kind of customer relationship management system or some social media marketing system, so we can really invest in our customer relationships. So the strategy basically defines what you will be doing with information technology in your organization. Finally, as a disclaimer, the whole flow from mission to concrete objectives we discussed now is kind of an ideal situation. So you have as an organization your mission and vision. From that you derive your strategy. From that you derive the concrete goals in the coming years or the coming periods in general. And that's it. In reality, though, strategy is influenced by a whole range of external and internal factors. So competitors, environmental factors, sociocultural developments, technological developments that can all require you to immediately adapt the course of action of your organization. So if you only focus on your mission and vision, and then suddenly there's a competitor which does the same as you, but then 10 times cheaper, then you'll be out of business. So you always need to take into account the wider surrounding and adapt your organization and its strategy flexible in order to remain into being. And that's what we call an emergent strategy. So basically, the thing I discussed before is the deliberate strategy, the intended deliberate strategy, of which, of course, some goals you will never achieve because reality stands in the way. And then there are emergent strategies that you observe in a wider environment, and those also are input for your strategy as an organization. Okay. Something a bit more explanation on the relationship between organization strategy and innovation in IT. That's basically what I said before, is that your general strategy is input for your information strategy, which is then input for your IT strategy. So I will explain this slide again when we talk about information systems. But for now, again, remind that the general business strategy is input for what you are going to do with information and information technology in your organization. I think that's enough for now. So the reason I show this slide is because what you do with technology in your organization and what you do with technological innovations in your organization is can be determined by your strategy of your organization, but it can also be the other way around. So basically, what you do with information technology and innovations in your organization basically means that you have to think about, okay, what kind of technologies will be important in the coming years for our organization, and you can do that thinking in two different ways. And that's what we call an IS/IT strategy. Again, more on that when we talk about information systems. But in general, you can think of it in three different ways. First of all, you can say, well, we have a general strategy for our organization, and from that we derive what we want to do with technology in our organization. But you can also observe technologies and from there adapt your organization strategy. And of course, there's always an intermediate, an interaction model. So the first model we call business alignment, business aligning. The second model we call business impact. To be more concrete, if you first have a general strategy for your organization in the coming years, and from that you derive what you should do with technology, we call it business aligning. If you observe changes in technology, which force you to redefine strategy of your organization, we call it business impact, because technology impacts your strategy of your organization. But in reality, of course, it's more an interaction. You observe some technological innovations, you adapt your strategy, etc. So to give an example of alignment, Facebook is a really old example, but suppose you're HEMA or you're some other organization. So HEMA is really a brick and mortar organization, which basically means they mainly sell in stores. But now HEMA says, well, we want to focus more on our online customer service. So we want to make online customer service our top priority. So if someone asks questions about HEMA using social media, we want to be on top of that. We want to help them, we want to reply, we want to counter negative feedback, etc. In doing so, what we need to do is we need to install a customer relationship management system, and we need to start up a social media management system. So we need to hire people who are on top of social media. We need to buy social media management applications so we can keep track of what everyone says about HEMA. And that will allow us to focus more on our online customer service. So that is business alignment, because they first define their strategic objectives for the coming years, and then they think about how can technology help us with that alignment. Impact. It's an example which I've used for a couple of years, but which has been caught up by reality in the meantime. If you are a newspaper now, you have to take into account the rise of tablets and smartphones and laptops in order to remain into existence. So it has been a couple of years, but every newspaper now has an online strategy for how to deliver newspapers online. That was something that newspapers did not come up with themselves. It was really the rise of tablets and the rise of easy to use and easy to take with you tablets and computers that caused newspapers, that forced newspapers to change their strategy and to focus more on online content instead of simply printing newspapers and then delivering them to your doorstep every morning or afternoon. So in this case, it was really a technological innovation, tablets, which forced newspapers to change and think about online content. And in this case, it was not the other way around. So this was clearly an example of, okay, you have a technological innovation. We see that more and more people have tablets. Okay, we need to do something with that. If we don't, it will have severe consequences for the organization. And that is called business impact. So technology redefines your organization strategy. So that was the first part of the lecture, and that was really an explanation of mission, vision, strategy, a bit of the relation between IT and your general strategy. In the remainder of the lecture, I want to explain a bunch. Not sure if I can do them all, but I want to explain a bunch of general strategic tools that you can use to think about your organization, that you can use to think about the strategy of your organization. This is not something I came up with. These are really in every business and management book, every business plan guide, etc. These are like the main tools that you use in order to define your organization strategy. So we're going to discuss a bunch of them, but we are going to do after the break. Oh, and before the break, I'm going to give an example of the interaction model of technology use. So the interaction model is really when there is an interplay between technology and strategy. So I think the best example now would be working out this example on screen now. So if you look at what newspapers are doing now, their strategy is really an interplay between the strategy they have and between technological innovations. So if you look at what newspapers do now, so if you now have the digital Volkskrant or digital newspapers, you can still read a newspaper like every day, but they increasingly provide, on the fly, on demand content, and you can click on papers and discuss and do all kinds of things that technology allows you to do that you could not do with a paper newspaper. I think that's an example of the interaction model, because in the meantime, since this example, newspapers have redefined their strategy, and they've redefined their strategy in becoming like general news providers instead of like newspapers. Based on their strategy, they can see that they need technology in order to achieve their strategic objectives, to keep people up to date of news. But on the same time, they are also really keeping an eye on what happens. So they're keeping an eye on new technologies, on what will happen in the iPad market. Will people get their news from watches or whatever? So they're now doing both. So it's not that they see something happening with technology and then realize we have to do something now. It's not that they have a strategy and then think about technology, but in their strategy is really the interplay. Impact is when you immediately see something in the surroundings and then decide that you have to change your strategy now. So that's, I think, rather different, because you then because then there's no forgot the word, no connection between the technology and your current strategy. Let's see if I can come up with a good example of a new technology. Well, okay. So if you are a watchmaker and you make ordinary old-fashioned watches, a couple of years ago, the rise of smartwatches would really have been an example of business impact. So they would have observed, like companies like Rolex, etc. They would have observed that Apple and some other companies are starting smartwatches, and that would have completely, well, maybe not completely, but for certain parts of the organization, that would have completely turned the whole strategy upside down. So they probably suddenly realized we need to do something with smartwatches. If we don't, we're going to miss the boat and we'll stop existing. So that was really business impact, so you observe, okay, I see that this technology will be there in the near future, so we have to do something now. An interaction would be that you already have addressed that in your organization strategy. So usually you go from impact to interaction in your strategy. I hope that kind of clears it up. But give me a moment during the break to see if I can come up with another example. So I suggest we have a break for 10 minutes and then continue in 10. I now realize that they also forgot to pause the recording. So that means there's a 10-minute nothing in between if you watch this recording online. But of course, you only find out after the break. So my weekend was okay. What did I do? Yesterday I worked because there's a lot of teaching now, so I had to prepare teaching and reply to email and do a lot of reviews for my research. And Saturday we had a family weekend, so I basically did my first escape room ever. Which is, I've never done an escape room before, but we were out in 35 minutes and we had an hour, so we were quite quick to do it. So thanks for asking. I hope your weekend was great as well. But, forgive me that I cannot ask all of you individually how your weekend was, but I hope it was great, and I hope you enjoyed the increased opportunities we now have to go out, even though it's only until 12 o'clock. Also mostly standing. I'm going to keep you up to date of my weekends. So let's continue. I got an email from someone asking what to do in the group paper, in the presentation, sorry, this today. Let's see if he's here. No, he's not here. Then I'm not going to explain it. So, okay, I thought of another example of business impact and business aligning. I don't know if you've heard of Google Nest and all the other smart home applications that you currently have. So, I think you can make your PowerPoint in whatever you want. So. As well, it's a group assignment, so there's only one member who can upload the presentation because I see it as a group assignment. Anyways, presentation in PowerPoint, well, I don't mind, but as long as you make sure that you don't spend 10 minutes starting up the presentation and installing some kind of weird plugin or whatever, make sure you are up and running as soon as it's your turn. So, and I don't mind if it's PowerPoint, PDF, or whatever you Mac users use. Okay, and again, to make sure it's about the first part of the business model, the presentation is not for a grade, but it's your opportunity to receive feedback on your ideas from your fellow students and from us. So I don't really mind what you present, but it is your chance to get feedback. So in general, you present your innovation and your business model, so parts A to C of the business plan, and focus on the things in your presentation that you're most unsure about. So if you're unsure about your innovation, if you're unsure about Porter's 5 forces, explain that and ask feedback for that. Okay, back to the example. You've heard of Google Nest, so that you can the device for your light, the smart home device for your lighting, etc. Google Nest is for your home, for your heating. I am pretty sure that if you are now a company who makes heating systems, that you now, not now, but like 2, 3, maybe 4 years ago, you were kind of taken aback or kind of shocked by all these innovations, and by suddenly more and more people investing in the Google Nest. And that really has forced these organizations to think about what are we going to do in the future. Do we want to build in Google Nest features right into our system? Do we want to sell our company to Google? Do we want to integrate Google Nest into our system? Whatever. So the start of the smart home innovations, especially Google Nest and related innovations, have really, I think, shook up like a pretty old-fashioned industry, which was used to making heaters. So they suddenly had to think about, okay, how are we going to integrate all the information technology into our systems? So they had to reinvent their business strategy in order to make sure they were ready for the future when more and more people will have a Google Nest. Now, they probably all figure it out, and probably now in their strategy for the coming years, there is some kind of plan, or they have some kind of team working on that integration. So now they have changed their strategy, and now there's a link between their strategy and the innovations we see with Google Nest, etc. So it was a business impact, but they observed Google Nest, we have to do something with that. Then they changed the strategy, and now it's an interplay between the innovation and the strategy. Okay, so much for the example. As that I think that's I hope that is clear now. So let me start with the general strategic tools. They're all not that difficult, to be honest. And so we'll see how far we get. Balanced scorecard is maybe something we don't need to discuss in full. McFarland strategic grid is specifically for information technology. We can also discuss that in the lecture on information technology and information systems. So we'll see. We'll just start, see how far we get. Why do you need these tools? Well, I think I already said that. So it's to develop your general business strategy. In general, when you write a business plan, when you have to pitch your business plan in front of an investor, these are the tools you generally use. So you do an analysis of who are my competitors, what business I'm in, what kind of organization do I have, etc. So you need these to define your strategy, and also if you work on a new business model or a new organization, you need it to sell your organization to investors. But for our specific goals, okay, you also need these tools to think about the innovation, to match the innovation with the organization strategy and to develop new innovations. Because as you have seen for the presentation and in your business plan you're working on, you can use these tools that you can use for general business strategy also to think about how your innovation will fit into the market. So you can use it for your innovation strategy. And similarly, you can also use it for your strategy, which is focused on information technology, on your information technology strategy. So you can do the same for the innovation, for the IT strategy as you do for the innovation strategy, for general business strategy. Think about, okay, what kind of tools do we need to use in our organization? What kind of technologies do we need? So let's start with this one. Pestle. Pestle, and there are some, so some of you, I think some of you who are pre-master students, you must have had something like this or a lecture which is really similar like this lecture in your previous education, especially if you did, commercial economy or some marketing related program. And then you may have come across a pestle analysis, but maybe it was called differently. And I don't remember what other names they have. So they sometimes switch the letters around, and sometimes they include, the step. Step. So D is for demographic. Okay. So D is for demographic factors, which is here is, I think here they just throw together socioeconomic and demographic, and they have added legal. Then so they added legal. That doesn't really specifically matter what kind of model you use, because it's just a way of thinking about the surroundings of your organization. So this really relates to this figure. Sorry. So it's kind of a tool to think about, to let you think about, okay, what kind of business are we in? What kind of innovation do we have? And what do we need to take into account? You can have a great idea for an innovation which automatically tracks people when they walk across the street. but you have to think about the pestle consequences of an innovation like that. So for example, if it would be in China, everybody would say, oh, that's a great innovation. We have another way to keep track of everyone. But if you're in the Netherlands, people would be less enthusiastic about an innovation like that. So basically that example, I think, relates to many factors of the pestle model. So an innovation that keeps track of people when they walk across the street has all kinds of political factors. You know, what is the political situation in a certain country or in a certain state within a country? Will it allow for an innovation like that? But also other things, you know, what is the tax law? What's the tax policy? What's political stability? They can all affect your organization, or they can affect the success of a potential innovation. Now you have economic factors. So are we in a situation of economic growth? Or are we in a situation of economic decline? Are we in a recession? So if you want to develop the newest version of an iPhone, which is 2 times as expensive as the previous one, you may want to take into account economic growth factors as well. Socio-demographic factors. Who is in your target group in a specific area? So what's the population? What's the population growth? What's the culture of people? Are there any cultural barriers in taking our innovation across national boundaries or across cultural boundaries, whatever? Regarding the example of keeping track of people, we have a much more individualistic culture here in the West than they have in parts of Asia. So keeping track of other technology will fit better in a more collectivistic culture than in an individualistic culture. So that's a social factor that can take into account. Well, technology is what we have been talking about in past lectures. Okay, what is happening in the technological? P stands for political. Sorry, political, economic, social, demographic, technological, environment, and legal. So T, the technological innovations you see can affect your can affect your organization or can affect innovations. Let me write it down. Social, demographic, tech, and environment, that's spelled wrongly, and legal. There we are. Economics, you know, climate things, weather, pressure for MGOs. So if you want to sell an innovation that's focused on climate or carbon emission reduction or so, you have a much better chance of that innovation succeeding than if you would have done it 20 years ago. And then legal, of course, there are kinds of legal issues to take into account in your business plan as well. Are you even allowed to use such a technology to track people on the street in the Netherlands? The negative impact or impact. No, you can also have, like, I think I gave examples of positive impacts as well. So the current environmental surroundings give rise to a whole lot of innovation and a whole lot of investments in environmental innovation. So that's a positive impact. So depends. In general, for your business plan, you know, you can write a complete business plan based on the pestle analysis alone, and you can spend pages and pages looking into every factor. In general, for your business plan, focus on the 1 or 2 main issues that are most relevant for you. So are there any obvious political or socio-demographic or economic factors that you think really affect your innovation, and discuss those? And if you think, well, I don't think there are any legal issues with your innovation, then don't discuss the L part of the pestle analysis. So that's pestle, pretty easy to understand, pretty easy to explain, pretty difficult to exactly find out every possible consequence. But for this, of course, you don't have to. For this business plan. Porter's 5 forces. This is the second one. This may be one of the most well-known strategic tools ever. So this is thinking about, okay, what business are we in, or in terms of innovation, what is our innovation? And if we look at 5 surrounding forces, 5 forces surrounding our organization, what can we tell about those 5 forces and how will they affect our organization? And so how must we define our organizational strategy to encounter those threats in the environment? And those 5 forces are, well, there are 5 and they kind of make sense, of course. So you're an organization, you sell peanut butter in a peanut butter store. And there are several threats. So you have the threat of new entrants, people coming in your business. And for your innovation, people who want to do the same or similar innovations as you do. You have the threat of substitutes. Those are not similar innovations, but substitutes that can substitute for the same, fill in like the same need or the same gratification for your customers. So for example, if you are a movie theater, a threat of substitutes would be books, because people can choose to read a book or they can go to the movies. So that would a substitute product, substitute gratification be for a movie. Similarly, if you make dishwashers, threat of substitutes would just doing your dishes manually. Then you have bargaining power of suppliers. So that is the power that your customers have. You can imagine that, that there are companies who only have a few customers. So if you're a very specific business-to-business company, it could perhaps be that you only have like 5 or 10 or maybe even less customers. Then, of course, your customers, your buyers have a lot of power, because if one of them switches, you may be out of business. So those factors can influence the bargaining power of your buyers. And then you have, similarly, you have the bargaining power of your suppliers. So if your product or your business requires very specialized input products and there is only one company who can deliver that input product, they have a lot of power. So if they decide to up the price like 100%, then you have no choice of paying up, because there is no alternative. If there are a lot of different suppliers, if your input is generic, then you can easily switch suppliers. And then finally, there's the rivalry among existing competitors. So what are your existing competitors currently doing? What are they up to? And that is called competitive rivalry. Yes. And there are many possible different threats for each of these 5 forces. So for new entrants, it's new entrants, but they can, they can be more cheap. There can be a lot of new entrants. Bargaining power of buyers. You can have only a very specific group of customers. The customers have an easy ability to substitute. Or you can, for example, your customers can be completely locked into your platform, and they have, and for your customers, it's very expensive to switch products. Then you have a lot of power over your customers. So for all of these, there are many different factors that affect your relationship to each of these 5 forces. So let's think about it for a while. So if we have the peanut butter store, so you're a small store selling different types of peanut butter. Let's start with bargaining power of suppliers. So who would your supplier be and what would their power be? So what would no, because that's not a correct question. Who would the suppliers be of the peanut butter store, and what types of threats can you identify? Peanut farmers, absolutely. What could happen? Yeah, peanut producers are their main suppliers, but also probably people who make jars. Yes, it's as simple as that. So a bad peanut season will really affect your the bargaining power of suppliers, because probably your will become much more expensive to buy the raw peanuts. They can put a high price on the peanuts, and the problem is you cannot really just compensate by making the product more expensive. So the product is not that elastic, so or it's not that inelastic. So you cannot just say to your customers, well, price of peanut has gone up like 200% or 300%, so the product becomes twice as expensive. You cannot just do that. Yeah, new entrants, sometimes someone else is better peanuts. Well, what would new entrants be? Well, let's do it together now. What would substitute products be for your store? Yeah, Nutella and other bread toppings. Well done. So most of the time, people have the tendency to really stay within their own business, so they think peanut butter, so substitutes must be other peanut butter companies. But no, a substitute can be something that fulfills the same need. So Nutella, other bread toppings, jelly, things like that. But also substitutes, maybe that's like kind of falls within further substitutes and rivalry among existing competitors is supermarkets who also sell peanut butter. It's probably more rivalry between existing competitors, because they are a competitor. They sell more, but they also sell peanut butter. So you have to stand out, and then you see what you can learn from this, because when you have all this in place, okay, we have to try to keep the relationship with our suppliers good. Maybe we need suppliers not only in one country, but maybe we need suppliers across the globe. So, for example, if the harvest in Indonesia fails, then we maybe have a good harvest in the south of America or something like that. Existing competitors are supermarkets. We, as a small peanut butter store, can never, ever be as cheap as supermarkets, because they have the economy of scale. So what we need to do probably is focus on unique products. So sell more expensive peanut butter and sell it as something that is unique, so with a specific taste, something like that. So a model like this also helps you to define your type of product, helps you to define what business are you in and what can you do. And in the examples I and you gave, you can also see what you can do to counter those threats. So for your suppliers, you can say, okay, well, let's make sure that we have not rely on one or only a few suppliers, but we have more suppliers across the globe. So that way, your power over your supplier increases. Similarly, if you know that you, your general propositions or your mission and vision strategy is based on selling a unique product, then you don't have to worry that much about economies of scale. So you can just sell your product for a higher price than the supermarket, because you have a unique product, thereby taking away a bit of the power of your existing competitors. Well, etc. So that way you can think of strategies that you can employ in order to take away these threats and have more power over these 5 forces. Finally, you can a good way of doing this, of thinking about how can we counter those 5 forces, is by using technology. And you see that there are all kinds of technological and innovation solutions to deal with each of these 5 forces. So, for example, with the bargaining power of suppliers, what you see with very large companies is that they try to connect their systems to those of their suppliers. So, for example, Albert Heijn has connected their systems with their suppliers. So they are so, well, not Albert Heijn, It's a bit difficult, but before Albert Heijn, there are like 5 general distribution organizations in the Netherlands that together are basically responsible for every product you see in the supermarket. So they are the connection between the farmers, so the people actually produce all the food, and the supermarkets. And they have systems in place that connect the farmers and all the other producers of food to the supermarkets. So they have connected their systems to their suppliers. So for suppliers, it's very handy to keep the connection between them and that company. And for the suppliers, it's very difficult to switch, because then they lose access to the system. And that way you kind of lock in your suppliers with your own company and you take away a threat. Moreover, it has all kinds of logistical advantages, because you as Albert Heijn no longer need to keep all those products in stock. But if your systems are connected, you can just automatically send a signal to your suppliers, well, we're running out of peanut butter, please restock our distribution centers. So connecting your system to those of your suppliers takes away a bit of the power that those suppliers have and gives you a bit more freedom. If you think about your competitors, so existing competitors, new competitors, threat of substitutes, you can think of, so that's basically what you need for your future strategy as well. So you can think of, okay, what are my competitors up to? How can I innovate my products in order to become better or cheaper or both? What other products can I come up with? What other products are my competitors developing? So you can think of technology in a way to deal with your competitors as well. And finally, buyers. This is what happens with all the platforms we're used to. So, okay, if you use the Apple ecosystem, you have an iPhone, you have iCloud, you have a MacBook, you maybe use iTunes. So you use the whole platform. If you want to switch products, it's really difficult because you're locked in. Similarly with Samsung, I use Samsung in the Google platform. For me, it would be very difficult to switch to iPhone. So you can create a platform, and Apple and Google have done so, to lock in buyers. So we're locked in, so they have made it technologically much more difficult for us to switch. That's also the reason why Apple has different, with the different blocks than the Google products, and that's also why a reason why the European Union now wants to have the same block, the same inlet for your phone for every product, and they do that different blocks, so that it's even more difficult to change platforms. So they lock you in using technology and technological innovations. So in sum, you can think of technology. So you can. No, let me start again. So in sum, these 5 forces are a pretty important and all-encompassing tool to think about your position as an organization in the immediate surroundings, but also as a specific tool to think about your innovation and its immediate surroundings. So it's a very good tool. And you can also use it to think of, okay, how can we strategically use technology, how we can strategically apply innovation to counter these threats. So you can also use this model to think about the role of technology in your organization. Do we need to use it in our presentation? Yeah, I don't remember. It's in the I think so. Yes, it's in parts A to C of the business plan. But again, you know, if you are pretty sure about that you have these covered for your business plan, by all means skip it. If you think you want feedback on it, then I would advise you to then present it. So again, if you want to do your presentation this week about your baby bunny, fine by me. Presentation is not for a grade; it's to get feedback, but it needs to be included in the business plan. In general, if I think at the number of points you can get for the 5 forces, I think it's a pretty important part of the business plan. So I would pay some attention to it in the presentation. Yeah. Please don't ask this question for all the models, because I forgot which one you. I remember that in the business plan instructions there, I specifically say, well, discuss your innovation with these strategic tools, but I forgot which ones. I think Porter's 5 forces, and I think this one, but I don't remember. Pestle and Porter, thank you very much. But it's in the instructions. And Tracy too. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so the third strategic tool I want to discuss quite briefly is Porter's generic competitive strategies. And this is just a way similar to the next one of classifying the type of business you're in, or in case of a specific innovation, the type of innovation you have. Here they distinguish 4, so it's a matrix, but in reality, they tend to distinguish 3 different competitive strategies. And they lump the focus ones together. So basically you have 3, you have cost, differentiation, and focus competitive strategy. Cost means that you are aiming to be the cheapest, or at least have the lowest cost across the industry that you're in. So if you talk about supermarkets, you want to beat Aldi. So you want to have like a supermarket where everyone can do groceries, and we want to do it as cost effective as possible. That's one, cost competitive strategy. Then you have a differentiation strategy, also industry-wide. That means that you're in a broad industry, say again supermarkets or computers or whatever, but your main strategy is to be better than the competitors. So not a specific focus on costs, but just a better or different product. Think Apple, think Albert Heijn in this case. And then finally, you have the focus strategy, and that is that you want to focus on a specific industry segment. Basically, you can see that as we want to focus on a specific customer group. So we don't want to focus on the entire industry, but we have a specific set of customers. So, for example, Apple used to focus on designers, so they would have a focus strategy and they focus their products on designers and creative people. That's a focus strategy. Then in the official model, the focus strategy is also a lowest cost and better products, but in general, we just consider 3 different strategies. So cost, differentiation, and focus. Lowest cost, best product, focus on a specific group, on a specific industry segment, specific group of customers. And that one is really similar to Tracy and Wiersma, only the figure looks way cooler. And they have, I think, done something similar, and they have said, well, if you look at the 3 things you can do as an organization, you can either be the best in product leadership, which is the same as the differentiation strategy. And so you can have the best product, or you can be excellent in operational costs. So you can excel in operational excellence, the best total cost, so be the cheapest one at the lowest costs. Or you can focus on customer intimacy, the best, we call it total solution, but the best customer relationships. What is interesting is what they say for, well, and that's the inner circle and the outer circle. They say you need some kind of threshold value. So you cannot completely disregard the other two if you focus on product leadership. So it cannot be extremely expensive and you cannot completely forget your customers. So you need to do everything a bit, which is the threshold value, the inner circle you see here on screen. But you should focus on one or two others, and that's your leadership value. So of course you need to be somewhat concerned about costs, you need to be somewhat concerned about your customers, but you can excel in having the best product. Or you can have okay products, okay relationship with customers, but excel in operational excellence. So that's the difference between a leadership and a threshold value. So basically you should do everything a bit, but you cannot do everything at the same time. So you have to focus. Though you see that there are organizations who specifically in their business model aim for, well, most of it. So if you look at HEMA or Lidl, they are relatively cheap. But Lidl really, their campaigns were the best in fruit and vegetables for the past 5 years. So they also focus on product leadership and also on customer intimacy as well. So they try to be the best in all. But in general, you see in tracing years, I must say that you may best focus on one of these pillars and aim for the threshold or a bit higher for the other two. I think I'm going to do this one and then we call it quits because there's been a lot of information. So a SWOT analysis, I think this one is well known. So SWOT is strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And this is like the basic generic thing you do when you write a business plan, or basically when you do anything regarding to organizing and regarding to innovation. So you think about what are my strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is really linked to both. So this is a very old tool, and this is something we do not need to discuss because this is very obvious. The interesting thing is that a SWOT analysis nicely relates your internal and your external aspects of the organization. So your strengths are really the things you are good at currently in your organization. So if you remember the business model canvas, they relate to the organization part of your organization. So your strengths are the things that you do well, that separates you from your competitors, what kind of resources you have. Your weaknesses is everything that you don't have or lack, such as indeed, things your competitors do better than you, resource limitations, etc. So your strengths and weaknesses are focused on your internal organization. So what can you do as an organization now good and what well, and what can you do less well? Opportunities and threats relate to those strengths and weaknesses because strengths lead to opportunities and weaknesses may lead to threats. But they connect the inside of your organization to the outside of your organization. Daisy, could you say what you mean by this, the SWOT analysis? I'm not sure what you are referring to. I don't think we did a SWOT analysis with communication theory. At least I don't remember that. So we discussed some advertising strategies, and I think it's related to that. But I don't specifically remember the theory. Sorry, I'll look it up for you. But the whole generic thing of, focusing on what you're good at and what you're not good at, and then connecting it to your internal and your external organization, is something that is quite common to many of these different models. So your opportunities and threats, kind of connect your internal to your external organization. So your opportunities are what you observe in the market, what you can do, because those are your strengths. Okay, so we are very good at this. We see that there are only a few competitors. Maybe we can do something else as well. We know we are good at making search engines, but in general, we are very good at handling information. Maybe we can do something else with our search engine business, says Google a couple of years ago. And similarly, your weaknesses are related to your threats. Okay, we are not so very good in innovation in our organization. We see that our competitors are, so that's really a threat. We do not have many people in our organization with up-to-date knowledge of technological innovation. That could be a threat, because we can miss out on obvious technologies that will arise in the coming years. And I think that's the interesting. So it's a very simple tool, but it really nicely connects the internal and the external organization. So I think that's why it still deserves attention. Like I said, I think I will discuss McFarlane's teacher grid in the lecture on information systems, because it also fits very well there, because it's really a tool focused on choosing technology for your organization. And balanced scorecard, I will not ask anything about that on the exam, of course. I only think it's it's a pretty interesting tool still. It's pretty old now, but it's still a fairly well-used management tool that is quite clear in the direction it gives you. So you can use the balanced scorecard to derive strategy from your mission and vision, and then from a bunch of perspective, set very specific goals. So for example, in the balanced scorecard, they say, well, if you have a strategy of your organization, you will always need to focus on these 4 perspectives. And then for these 4 perspectives, you need to really define, okay, how will you measure them? What are their targets? And what are you going to do to accomplish it? So for example, if your strategic objective is you want to reduce costs, you need a way to measure what are our costs. So what are our costs per unit produced? So how much does it cost to manufacture 1 jar of peanut butter? And then you need targets. Okay, now making a jar of peanut butter costs €1.50. In 2 years, we want it to cost €1.30. And then you need to set concrete initiatives of how you want to accomplish that. So this balanced scorecard is really what you do with your strategy if you want to really work out your strategy in concrete objectives. Okay, we want to do this, then we measure it with this, then these are our targets in the coming years, and this is how we are concretely going to achieve this. So this is also a pretty easy tool to use, but I think very useful if you were to work out your business plan in detail as a real company. But let's stick with this. No need to explain this in detail. So McFarlane's strategic grid we're going to do in the next in lecture 8, and I think this was more than enough for this week. So I'll see you, or you see someone. What kind of lecture do we have on Friday? You sure this is the same course? No, you have a work group session. Yeah, well, yeah. All the work group sessions are in the timetable because I did not know which work group session you would be in before you signed up for a subgroup. So I now know, of course, that if you group 37, you have a work group session on Friday, October 1. But I cannot change this in Osiris. I cannot go to your Osiris and delete all the other work group sessions for you, because I don't have those rights. So unfortunately, all the work group sessions are in your timetable agenda thingy in Osiris. But there is only one work group session you need to follow this week, depending on the group that you're in. Okay. If you have questions, please email me so that I can tell you which group you're in, so that you show up on time. Okay, thank you, thank you very much. Any other questions? And for those who don't have any questions, thank you very much, and I'll see you this week, or you see someone this week, and I'll see you next week. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah.
Hello, can I ask it like this? It will be